Hey, welcome everyone. Wonderful. Nice to see you all. Oh, yeah. I didn't do the thing that gets me into Zoom, that gets me to see all the Zoomlanders. So, okay. Anyway, I welcome all of you in virtual reality as well. Thank you for coming. So, this is our third class in this course called Buddhist Mind Science, Cultivating Lasting Happiness. So we are actually exploring whether that's possible or not. And if so, how? So we're on a journey to develop an intuitive understanding of the mind, how the mind fabricates its experience of the world. And this only comes from observation and direct experience. So understanding the mind, we begin to realize our innate capacity to become more fully conscious and eventually overcome all harmful emotions and behaviors. Wow. What do you think? You down with that? So when our speech and our actions come from a place of wisdom and compassion, they always produce a better result than when driven by greed or anger. This is not something that we have to believe. We can see for ourselves the results of following these afflicted emotions that we have been talking about. So maybe we can begin with a short meditation that considers the inner values, excuse me, that bring meaning to our life. Those inner values: love, compassion, joy, harmony, friendship, peace, inner and outer peace. So we grow our warm-heartedness when we establish a sense of purpose motivated by wisdom and compassion. So perhaps we can open our hearts to the possibility that we can contribute to the happiness of others. Just to be open to that possibility that through the power of recognizing our own inner potential and realizing our highest potential, then we can, in fact, help others. So please, I invite you to settle into a meditation seat in a relaxed and gentle way. Let your spine lengthen and straighten. And perhaps bring your awareness to your crown. And imagine there a small sphere of warm, loving light that begins to descend down through the body. It brings relaxation. Let it float down through the center. Let your facial muscles soften as the light flows down. Attend to any feelings of discomfort or tightness. Breathing into them, let them release and soften. Scan all the way down to your sit bones. And let your belly be soft to receive the full breath. Connect to the earth's energy with a sense of groundedness and stability as you feel the places where your body touches the seat. Now, begin to turn your attention to the sensation of the breath as the body breathes, to create an inner space in which our values have room to grow. Be relaxed, in peaceful ease, easygoing. And when distractions come, as they will, gently, without pushing, simply come back to the breath, wherever it's manifesting most distinctly for you. Perhaps the rise and fall of the belly, or at the tip of the nose. Gently come back as often as needed, without clinging to distractions, rejecting them, or trying to stop them. Simply observe the breath and allow whatever arises to dissolve on its own. Nothing to do, nothing to undo, easy going. How wonderful. Think now about love, compassion, wisdom, great joy, and wishing to develop them. Consider how wonderful it would be if all beings were happy. Imagine living in a world free from anger, hatred, attachment, greed, and the ignorance which serves as their foundation. Allow your heart to open to the possibility and to long for it. And perhaps you feel a sense of warmth in your heart. Let it fill you up. And then imagine if our every act, every word, every thought was motivated by a wish to benefit. Imagine that. And perhaps we may consider that our motivation for this session, to be full of the realization of our highest enlightened potential. That our wish for immutable happiness for ourselves and all beings might be fulfilled. How wonderful. Good. Thank you. Here we're exploring meditation as a tool, as a means for transforming our minds from afflictions to wholesome mental states, as a tool that helps us and brings us well-being. not only for us, but for others as well. I find when I try to cultivate this warm-heartedness, there's a softness, a gratitude for having met these teachings. There's a pleasant, peaceful ease that comes along with wishing to benefit others. How long it lasts, well, I feel like putting a smile on my face, but the lasting is dependent, isn't it? It's dependent. So we're exploring our current state. If we look honestly, we can see that quite often we follow afflictions in our minds. And maybe they're of low intensity, but when we're meditating, pausing, being still, just breathing, we can see how often we're distracted. Yes? So we can see that these distractions are often mixed with mental afflictions. You know, an affliction is something that ultimately brings suffering. The mind, anything that moves the mind away from a state of peace. And so we can see that our distractions are mixed. So if they're of low intensity, that's not necessarily a problem. We see it arise, it abides, and it dissolves. But when they increase their intensity, they become action motivators. And we've been exploring whether afflictions are the best motivators, the best energy to follow in our lives. Or could we do better? And what would that look like? Cultivating our inner qualities to make them flourish within us creates a habit of cultivating. So, as William James said, that to which we attend in the moment becomes our reality. What kind of a reality are we interested in living in? It stands to reason that the more we marinate the mind in wholesomeness, the more these attitudes of loving kindness, compassion, and wisdom will arise in the mind, and the more happiness we will receive. Awareness meditation helps create an inner mental space within which our qualities can grow, be cultivated, be activated. We recognize them. And so this is what we're exploring. And what we work with is the tool of meditation. And for this mind transformation, I wonder if you had a chance to practice any of the practices that we have been talking about in the last 2 sessions. Some awareness meditation, some grounding meditations. If you're interested in exploring them, the course manual is fabulous and has very detailed information. And if you have any questions, you're welcome. And if you if you're in Zoom land and you have a question, you could put it in the chat and someone will pop and let me know. I can't necessarily answer everything in the moment, but at some point in time it will be addressed. So today we're going to investigate a little more about meditation, understood as bhavana, which means cultivation or familiarization with the wholesome. So we'll explore how to recognize and manage what is potentially wholesome or unwholesome. And we'll also explore the role of wisdom. We've mentioned this before, how to understand that both wisdom and warm-heartedness are the basic qualities that we have as social beings, that we share with other beings. They're natural in all human beings, and they're the core of the wholesome attitudes that we recognize build a meaningful life. Wisdom and warmheartedness, the two wings that fly us to enlightenment. So they bring purpose to our actions. And we'll see how warmheartedness in relation to biology helps us as social beings, how to connect with warmheartedness, to know what warmheartedness is, and to recognize that it does connect us to the best potential that already lies within our minds. Kandrila, a highly realized master in our tradition, suggested that when she found that when many modern people think about meditation, they think of something that's very relaxed and not holding anything in mind. But this idea that meditation is purely focusing the mind, calming the mind, or simply being present with no thought or very few thoughts, I think is a common idea about meditation. But the great masters tell us that we have a very precious intelligence, very precious, which, if used properly, can show us reality as it is. And then, when we see something that's wholesome, well, we embrace it, we engage with it. And also, if we see something that's harmful or negative, we can avoid it. We could see that having this kind of intelligence is super precious and very useful. Meditation, in addition to cultivating mindfulness and relaxation, also has this component of analysis that builds wisdom. Most formal meditative techniques can be classified into two main groups. Do you know what they are? Stabilizing and analytical. Stabilizing meditation involves focusing on an object to calm the mind, develop concentration, and diminish distractions. Analytical meditation focuses on investigating aspects of reality and developing wholesome mental states. Stabilizing meditation is the building block. It's the tool that allows us to analyze reality. If our mind is scattered and moving quickly, thinking about what I'm going to do next, or what I did yesterday, or what I'm going to do next tomorrow in 10 years, it's very difficult to analyze. Very difficult to analyze. Following our thoughts, we interrupt our analysis and we forget the point. Have you had this experience? Really? How surprising. Finding yourself daydreaming, doing some interior design. I remember one very good friend from long ago said that's what she spent a lot of time doing, a lot of redecorating. It's very difficult to analyze when you have a scattered mind. So it's hard to pay attention to a single object or to investigate reality from a scientific point of view because our minds are so scattered. So, as an example, if you want to investigate the cosmos, you use a telescope and you focus it and you keep it steady. I mean, if you're doing this, you don't see anything. And it's the same with the mind. We cultivate this ability to remain in momentary present awareness on whatever object we have chosen. And then we keep coming back like training a puppy, bringing it back and bringing it back. Gently, kindly, never disparaging ourselves for one more time getting lost. So as soon as we notice that we're lost in thought, to just come back. Now, what was that object? Yes. It's so important, so important. So using stabilizing meditation, we develop the capacity of our mind to focus on something with intensity. Lama Yeshe used to say, strong determination. And we can see things that we haven't seen before because we haven't looked. You see, we haven't looked. It's not like it's not there. So using stabilizing meditation followed by analytical meditation as a tool to investigate our experiences of what we've seen, to investigate reality, we reach a conclusion, and then we stabilize those conclusions by pausing and holding in the mind that conclusion. This allows our conclusion to become deeper knowledge. So when we have what I call a Dharma aha, we take that aha and we pause. Oh, yes. And it becomes our truth. I like to think of it as first there's stabilizing as you bring the mind into this point, and then there's analysis, and then once again, there's stabilizing and pausing. It's like a sandwich. Stabilizing, analysis, stabilizing. It's excellent. It's a beautiful way to work with your mind. It gives you a chance to then pause one more time after you have decided, yes, this is true, what I have been investigating, rather than, okay, bish, bash, bosh, I'm done and I'm out of here. But really sitting there, thinking about, wow, yeah. And perhaps further analysis of what does that mean in my life? It's interesting. So sometimes we receive an instruction not to be too judgmental or too critical, but it doesn't mean we don't have an opinion. And we do have an opinion, and we need to be able to discern, to discriminate between this and that. And this is especially important when it comes to analyzing what's arising in the mind. Is it beneficial or not so much? So let's do a little analytical stabilizing sandwich and see. So please, if you like, take a good seat to make it practical, to really understand. So we begin with a pause, coming into the body, grateful for another opportunity. But we don't know when another might come. Making a strong determination to remain present and do our best. Settling into relaxation. Stillness. And vigilance. Become aware of the body and the mind and how we feel in the place where we are. Bringing awareness to the present moment with a sense of ease and care. Not pushing, not forcing. It's more like letting go. And notice how things change from moment to moment. And it's helpful, perhaps to bring awareness to the breath as a means for settling the mind for just a few moments. So now I invite you to recall a moment in your life that was a challenge for you. Not a big one, but a moment of dissatisfaction, unpleasant experience, discomfort, something that we didn't like that happened in our past. And do so without following the story too much. Try to remember how you felt in this situation. What was our experience? Generally speaking, when we have an unpleasant experience, the tendency is to reject it, to push it away. And as we remember, perhaps continuing to feel the displeasure that arose at the time. I didn't like it then. I don't like it now. And I don't want to think about it. Let's inquire. Does such rejection help us act in useful ways? By rejecting, does it alleviate the suffering? Does it create more suffering? Investigate a bit along this line of reasoning. If you have this sense of rejection, would it help to experience this situation with some acceptance? For instance, what happens if you say, okay, this is just what there is. Now we'll see where we go from here. With some acceptance and discernment. Does this create a different feeling? Check. You may conclude that perhaps rejection is not so useful. If so, stay there with an open mind. Not so useful. And then you might think, what if I faced situations like this with equanimity? Unpleasant circumstance, facing it with equanimity, with an open, balanced mind that sees it as it is, that doesn't fall into clinging and rejection as its main energies. Try to visualize yourself facing this situation with equanimity instead of rejection, and then stay there for a moment. We'll conclude the meditation by bringing our awareness again to the present moment, an open mind, open awareness, and whatever we're experiencing right now with ease and care. So it's interesting to watch our minds in various situations and see what energy is there. What's arising? Either from strong attachment or strong aversion, to see the energy. What would happen if we applied a mind of equanimity? How would it feel different? Would it feel different? It's to investigate, it's to explore, it's to check up. This is what the Buddha told his disciples. You must investigate, you must explore, you must examine how the mind fabricates its experience of the world until you have no doubt in your heart. So it's interesting to watch how the mind changes. Consider you're on your way to a meeting. A little example. You're on your way to a meeting. It's an important meeting. You've got plenty of time. You stop at the store because you're going to pick up a little something for your lunch. And you're standing in line. You have plenty of time. I think you have plenty of time. And there's we could say, an old appearing frail gentleman or woman in front of you. You just kind of get that picture standing in line at the cash register. They just have one or two items, so you know it's not going to take very long. And then when that person gets up to the checker, she has to change the tape in the printer. And you look at your watch. There's still plenty of time. And then he's about to pay for his purchase, or she. He has a shoulder bag over his shoulder and he pulls out his coin purse, counting out the purchase price. And he drops the little purse and the coins go everywhere. And now you're getting pushed. So what happens in the mind? What's the first thought? What's the first thought? Like, phew, Is there irritation that arises? Or is there automatically a sense of wanting to help? If the irritation comes, there's a sense of dis-ease, unease, irritation, not pleasant. But if compassion arises and you get down and you pick up the coins, you help him and you help him put them in his purse, and he looks at you and smiles, your heart just cracks open. And it's a pleasant experience in that shopping. The difference between the two is night and day. When we're self-oriented, my appointment, my meeting, versus other-oriented, his welfare, his happiness. Actually, it shifts our own happiness from irritation to warmheartedness when we think of others. So it's good to really actually look at what's happening. If we analyze, it's easy to see which of those scenarios we would prefer. And this is what meditation does for us, to actually sit down and take circumstances that actually are happening in our own life, see how we reacted to them, and could we have reacted in a different way that would have brought a different outcome? And reframe it. See yourself acting differently. And it's not about beating yourself up. I'm a bad person. No, it's about, great, I see a new way. I'm going to try to practice in that way. It's very helpful. You see? When we find something we don't like, immediately aversion arises. It's natural. The next step is, what are we going to do with it? But aversion only magnifies our unhappy situation. We can see. So there's an interesting study about pain, that the more we are averse to pain, the greater the suffering. It's just interesting to look at. I notice that sometimes when I have pain, my mind will project the current pain, the future pain, and all of the possibilities about what's going to happen as a result of that. And that increases the suffering that arises as a result. But if we are present, aware of the present, it doesn't mean that the pain doesn't exist, but there's a certain relief of acceptance of what's happening in the moment. There's a certain sense of, okay, then I accept, and what will we do about it now? Most people say that rejection doesn't really help, but it doesn't mean resignation. It doesn't mean accepting a situation because we feel powerless or doomed to failure, so we don't even try to solve it. It's not like that at all. So when we project a strong dislike on the unpleasant as inherently unpleasant, fixed, this is the way it is, it's almost irrational. I don't like the situation, that's it. I want it to disappear. And then we feel unease and discomfort. So if we have some experience of acceptance, it seems that there's less suffering. And this isn't indifference, it's an open mind. It's okay, that's what's happening right now. So we can see what's there with a balanced, open mind. And there's a sense of inner strength. It's like, okay, we'll see what we're going to do now. There's a strength rather than a poor me attitude. So sometimes when the mind is full of worry over various and sundry things in our life, it's helpful to just go have a cup of tea with a friend, or go to the movies, or It's okay to distract yourself and enjoy as much as possible, dear, Lama used to say, without grasping. He said over and over, enjoy as much as possible, dear, without grasping. So sometimes it's good to not get stuck in a downward spiral, to find things that will bring you joy. Actually, it's always good to find things that will bring you joy. And then recognize the joy and bring it into your heart. Oh, yes, nice. It grows your joy. So let's talk about equanimity. We say face it with equanimity. So what does that mean? We may have different definitions. I keep a dictionary beside my seat when I'm reading or studying, or some word comes up in a meditation text. But why did they choose that word? Because all of these are being translated from Sanskrit or Hindu or Tibetan, So why did the translator choose that word? It's good to look at different definitions. And in this context, equanimity refers to a mind that remains balanced and impartial. So it's not swept down the river of misery. It has the potential to pause and discern. So in equanimity, we have that balance, but it doesn't mean we don't have an opinion. Doesn't mean we just stay blank in equanimity. It's not like that. There's a discernment and a differentiation to be able to check with wisdom what's going to be the most beneficial way to proceed. So we don't want to confuse it with indifference. And acceptance is not just keeping my mind neutral without judging the situation and having no opinion. It's not like that either. So it's a mind that can discern different situations, some pleasant, some unpleasant, and most of them are neutral, actually, with the same kind of interest, fully awake and aware. And it's because we're not getting carried away, swept toward that which we like and turning away from that which we don't like. So stop for just a moment and think about the ways we relate to things in our life. So think about what you were doing before you came to the session. The example that, that Hans gave was maybe having a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. And he said, maybe you had a snack or breakfast. And maybe it was pleasant. And we can see how the mind tends to focus on pleasant things. Our attention goes easily there. We're happy to stay. We have something pleasant, happy to stay, so nice. But what if, for instance, you're having your nice cup of coffee or your nice cup of tea, and then suddenly you realize there's something wrong. There's something there that shouldn't be there. There's a flavor that's ruining your tea or your coffee. You can see how the mind spins on that one. Doesn't stay with that nice cup of coffee that's now got a bad flavor. Now it's going to do something about that. And could perhaps. It doesn't mean that you can't just say, okay, I think the milk was off, and you do something about it. It's just looking, instead of developing irritation, saying, I wonder who left the milk out on the counter last night. Things like that. It's being wise and checking to see what's really true in the moment. So it's awareness that moves us to label this unpleasant. And when that happens, there's a tendency to get stuck. Is it true? Is that your experience? When you have something pleasant and nice, you're happy to stay there. And when you have something that you've labeled unpleasant, you'd like to be free of it, quite the same way. So this is happening to us all the time. There are many things we don't pay attention to because we find them neither pleasant nor unpleasant, considered neutral. So equanimity broadens our awareness. So it's good to pay attention to the pleasant things and to pay attention to the neutral things because they may give us some important information. If we only focus on the pleasant, we narrow our field of awareness. We've been using stabilizing and analytical meditation. And when we focus on the breath, stabilizing, we don't follow distractions. We let them go, right? Let them go. Whether pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, whatever arises, we don't feed them. We simply come back, right? This is what we do when we're practicing equanimity as well. If we don't want our minds to attach to the first thing that arises in it, we don't feed what's appearing with that label, that label, that label. So in this way, we cultivate a balanced and strong mind. When we engage in meditations like analyzing our life, it's not to engage very intellectually. It's really trying to come to a feeling of when that kind of situation arises, this is how I behave. This is my tendency to push or to walk away, just to look. And when we observe what the consequences are, if we don't react with rejection, we observe what acceptance looks like, how we might be able to be different in that situation and create a better outcome for ourselves and others. So then we stay there with our stabilizing mind. And in that way, we're mixing analysis and stabilization. And we imagine ourselves in this difficult situation, overreacting, and then instead respond with acceptance and see what happens as you do this intellectual, this sort of analytical reframing of the way that you habitually behave. So the more we observe, analyze, pause, and integrate positive mental states, then we increase our positive qualities. I remember reading in, I think it was Buddha's Brain or Hardwiring Happiness, Dr. Rick Hanson's books, that when you engage in an action, a thought, it creates a neural pathway. And if you hold it for 20 seconds, actually, if you hold a thought, here's how it goes, I think. If you hold a thought for 20 seconds, it deepens an existent neural pathway or creates a new one. So we want it to go straight to compassion, love, and generosity, peace, goodness. So when we smell a rose, and we hold that, wonderful, think, oh, wouldn't it be nice to offer this wonderful thing to all beings? And then you feel your heart open and you hold it for 20 seconds. The chances of seeing a rose next week and doing the same thing, because there's what do they call them? Endorphins, some pleasant sensation that happens in the body when you create positive thoughts. So something happens. It's very, very interesting. So the more we remain mindful through the power of cultivating our meditations, the more courage and energy we have not to follow mental afflictions. We can see, I'm sure we all know people who have just been so habituated in irritation, I could say, or seeing things as not okay, that they just can't see the good. You know? They just can't. So habituated. Somehow we have to harness the energy of goodness so that our mind, that's what appears in the mind. In the future, there will be more if we continue to do this course, more of an understanding of the nature of mind and how, in fact, it actually works. Oops. Yeah. I wonder if I should be irritated. Would that be a good reaction? Let's all be irritated. Sorry. Let's not. So the more we remain mindful through the power of cultivating our meditations, seriously, the more courage and energy we have not to follow mental afflictions. And equanimity is central, not just to meditation, but also to build up the foundation of wisdom. So let's turn our attention to warmheartedness and the potential that we have as human beings. So I think it's no doubt clear to all of us that we have the potential to be selfish. I think so. And even perhaps to mistreat or take advantage of others. But we also know that we have the potential to be altruistic, the potential to connect with others and care about them. So this has been studied scientifically. And the serious research that has shown that even though we have the potential to be brutish, the potential to be extremely selfish and harmful to each other, along with the potential to destroy them, we also have the altruistic potential, which I really like hearing that it seems stronger, that our altruistic potential seems stronger in scientific investigation. Considering evolution, the hypothesis is that because we have this social nature, this altruistic nature, it's because of that we have survived as a species. From a scientific perspective on altruism, the qualities that are linked to our social nature, we find that through the power of meditation, we can enhance these qualities. Interesting. In biology, an altruistic action is defined as one that leads to results that benefit all of us, no matter what the motivation is. In psychology and in Buddhism, the focus is on the motivation that drives the action. I'm reminded. Yes. So in Buddhism and in psychology, the focus is on the motivation that drives our action, not just the fact that the action produced a benefit. It's possible to do something that some people don't like, but you do this for the benefit of others, like protecting someone. And in this case, our motivation is not to please others, it's to protect the person from harm. And this altruistic attitude, caring for others, we can see is innate in many mammals. We can see mammals and birds and other species. There's a strong biological basis. We're hardwired to altruism. I like that. And research also shows that there's a strong foundation for ethics in our social nature, in our caring nature. It's like we have building blocks for ethics, a basic kind of natural ethics, even though we have this selfish and brutish potential. Science has shown we have three main motivational circuits in the brain. The first is a network of neurons that trigger passions for our actions, which is sometimes called a wanting seeking system. I'm hungry, I want food. If I'm lucky, I find food, I eat. It's essential for our survival. The second is a fear system. When I see danger, I run away. And the third system that has been overlooked for many years is the caring system. It leads to a sense of connection, contentment, relaxation. It reduces fear, and it benefits our health and well-being. Caring. We should also note that when we care for ourselves, not in a selfish way, we're actually caring about others. When a social attitude arises that allows us to connect with others in a caring way, when we nurture them, biology rewards us. How do you think? With loving kindness, compassion, connection, friendship, and yes, altruism. It's said to be healthy selfishness. And there are many examples of animals and human beings doing things that actually harm themselves in order to protect others. I think we've seen that in nature documentaries, and we certainly know that in terms of the service professionals firemen who go into fire zones and, medics, and unbelievable, really. And protection is extended not just to family and friends, but strangers we can see, and perhaps even other species. The Dalai Lama says that if we have this selfish nature, at least try to be wise selfish and try to be more altruistic. So at the base of all of this is a capacity that we all have called empathy. Empathy is the ability to experience what others feel, both emotionally and cognitively. It's also the ability to understand what they feel, their mental state. I understand your suffering. Since I understand my own suffering, I can understand yours. And it's said to be the foundation of the caring system. Its basis, this caring system, empathy and compassion. Compassion moves on from empathy. It's based on empathy. It's a mental state that has a genuine wish to relieve someone's suffering. I want to relieve it because I know it doesn't feel good. It's painful. And we often think of empathy as compassion. We conflate them. We don't distinguish. But being an empathic person, although it seems to be a caring person, is not necessarily true. So let's distinguish between the two. Here, empathy is simply understood as an ability to connect, to recognize, and to resonate with the emotions of others, to understand their mental state. So it's important to understand the distinction between the two. They're not the same. And it's important for empathy to move to compassion. So research indicates that when we empathize with others, we recognize their suffering. But if I see your suffering from a self-oriented perspective, I don't like it. Doesn't feel good. Poor me, poor you. I feel this and I don't like it. So it may lead to empathic distress. Too much. I can't stand to look at it anymore. No, it's just too much. And it's a state of mind that we can't manage. We're overpowered by suffering. Oh, I think we know this one, just being overpowered. If I start focusing on myself, the natural tendency is to reject the suffering. Not because we're bad people, but we just can't deal with what's resonating inside when we see it anymore. And this empathy is not to be cultivated. It's something to diminish. The alternative is compassion. So this is when we see suffering. I see it here, and I wish the suffering to be alleviated. So this is interesting. With compassion, we stay there and we imagine ourselves bringing light to the situation. We imagine this suffering being alleviated. If we're able, we take action. But regardless of whether we know we can't save this person or make a great change, we imagine alleviating the suffering and we stay there with compassion. How wonderful it would be if all beings were free from suffering and all its causes. It creates a sense of connection with the other without a sense of rejection. There's a sense of you and me being equals. I see your suffering and I would like to fix it. I would like to do something, and I try. Even if it's just holding someone's hand. And it activates this sense of compassion, activates mental well-being. There's been a lot of research into the effects of compassion in the mind and brain. It activates the circuits of well-being. This means compassion feels good. To have compassion, warmheartedness, it feels good. So there is a mention of compassion fatigue, which is a question of terminology. Imagine a professional who's attending an emergency, resonating with the same emotions of the person who's injured in deep distress. We don't want our professionals to be resonating too much with the emotions of the person who's suffering. We want this professional to acknowledge the suffering, acknowledge the harm, but in a cognitive way, and immediately jump into action. Maybe it's just holding the person's hand. This we can do. It's worthwhile to mention compassion fatigue, but what it means is we're focusing too much on the actions and forgetting to take care of our own mental state. It's important for those who are in the caring professions to recognize, now maybe I need to take a break. I have to take care of myself. Self-care is equally important. So it's useful to understand the terminology. It's quite possible that compassion fatigue is actually empathic distress. Interesting to think about. Two different understandings. So if compassion is existent, there's no distress. We take self-care, self-compassion. So it's something that we may also experience. So it's good to acknowledge and not to push ourselves when we're helping others. Good to acknowledge. We need to practice self-care as well as caring for others. So important. So far, the presentation has offered details to show clearly that there are alternatives to afflictions by continuing to activate our inner qualities. And this really means recognizing our meaningful attitudes. Oftentimes, we recognize the afflictions, but we need to also stop and recognize our love. And when we have engaged in compassionate actions, and when we feel joy, to really acknowledge and let it marinate in the mind. So this means recognizing our attitudes and activating them through wisdom and warmheartedness. And those are the two essentials for human beings to develop properly. We need wisdom the ability to understand the richness and interconnection of things while widening our perspective and recognizing the role of mind in our experiences. And also warmheartedness, this sense of connection with oneself and others. This opens our heart to make room for others. And if we develop these two, wisdom and warmheartedness, it's really beautiful. It brings well-being into our lives. And by consequence, into the lives of others. You know that saying, when mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy? Yeah. So we like to be around people who are happy. It's helpful to others. So let's be clear that to see how altruism is defined, in biology, it's defined as actions that benefit others. But here, from a Buddhist perspective, it's about the motivation underlying our actions. And remember, too, that we must take care of ourselves. If we don't, we won't be able to manage our own suffering, and we'll be unable to help others manage theirs. So let's engage in a meditation again to explore a caring attitude. This caring potential, focusing on ourselves. It's sad to see how we often put ourselves down, expecting too much from ourselves. So let's give ourselves room to just be human beings who have an extraordinary potential for goodness, and recognize that we also have anger and fear and selfishness. It's just part of what we are in the moment. So I invite you to relax and settle the mind into momentary present awareness. Turning to the sensation of the breath as the body breathes. Letting go. Thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Let them be. And attend to the breath as an anchor. All things arise within awareness. They arise, they abide, and they dissolve. Leave them alone and attend to the breath. Now I invite you to call to mind, perhaps, a harsh attitude that we may have toward ourselves. Maybe choose something small. We often expect too much of ourselves, putting ourselves down for not being the kind of person we would like to be. We may consider situations where we have acted in ways that made us feel bad. I think I'm just a bad person. I did it wrong. I didn't do the right thing. Try to recall if you have had these kinds of attitudes, looking at them with perspective from afar. Does such a harsh attitude make sense? I mean, are we perfect? When we act in ways we dislike, perhaps harming others or ourselves, is it something we choose to do? Do we have complete freedom there? Could we, rather than being harsh, perhaps acknowledge that what we did was harmful and have regret? Could we try to bring an attitude of accepting that I'm not perfect? We don't decide in advance to become angry at someone. We may become overpowered by situations, by our own emotions. We can regret our actions, try to improve. That's healthy. It's possible also, perhaps, to make amends. And if we regret our actions, we can internally forgive ourselves and let go of any harsh attitude, remembering that we're a work in progress. We're not absolutely perfect. And we will try to improve. Most of us try to be a good person, a good human being. And most of the time we are. So let us cultivate a sense of loving kindness for ourselves, acknowledging the many, many wonderful things that we do and that we embody. And in this way, allow ourselves to make peace with ourselves. And gradually, keeping awareness of the beautiful qualities that we have. It uplifts our heart. Think about that. How wonderful. I do have these qualities. Let yourself feel warm-hearted towards yourself. Okay, good. Thank you. We do live in a society that's quite demanding, and we demand a lot of ourselves, and we demand a lot of others. And this is especially true for young people. Oh my, trying to be perfect with the internet watching. We want to be everything, the most beautiful, the most intelligent, the most clever, the funniest. So exhausting. Do we base our self-esteem on our appearance, on the things we do well, what we have, or who we know? Here, the suggestion is to raise our self-esteem through the acknowledging our very basic things. I'm alive. I want to be happy. I don't want to suffer. I do my best. And that's enough. That's enough for me to be able to care for myself and to really love myself. And sometimes, especially when we're facing a difficult situation, it's helpful to put our hands over our heart when we do this kind of meditation. It can bring a feeling of warm-heartedness. We're giving this information to the brain, to the mind, that all is well. It's an embracing gesture to love ourselves as we are, with our limitations and our ups and downs. And it's a matter of going there again and again. We can imagine someone giving us love, caring for us. And stay there feeling loved. And we can extend that sense of feeling loved to others, giving others happiness, peace, contentment. And in this way, we can embrace the whole world. Spend more time doing joyful things. Treat each other with understanding, letting go of resentment toward ourselves and others. The beauty and power of meditation is that every time we go there, we're rewiring our brains and transforming our mind every time. So we can accept that, yes, I'm not perfect. We accept. So it's good to love ourselves, accept our failures and our limitations, which we all have, and then stay there and give love to ourselves. Go there again and again. The more we do, the more natural it becomes. And we think of sharing this with others. So this week, for our homework, we continue the basic practice of awareness and cultivating and stabilizing the mind to find this inner peace and greater freedom, and paying special attention to a caring attitude toward ourselves. Notice when we're unkind or harsh toward ourselves, and use the antidotes that we've explored, trying to develop a greater caring, not just for ourselves, but to all beings, even those that we find difficult. So we'll continue to familiarize ourselves with the best qualities so that we can diminish our not so good qualities. This is the journey. Yeah. What's it called? Sangye, purified and perfected. It's translated as Buddha. You know that prayer. Sangye chodang soke chognam la. Sangye, Buddha, purified and perfected. So, yes, we have this potential within us. We just have to do the work. Okay? We have 4 minutes. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. I would like to read a question from Susan Fujimoto, and it may resonate with all of us as well. Let me see. Okay. From Susan Fujimoto, my mind is disturbed and I don't know how to calm it. It's about the environment. By loving the precious creation of this earth and watching it burn through unchecked climate change and poisoning, how do we find calm? I live in Monterey, where a lithium battery plant is burning uncontrolled, poisoning people, and Elkhorn Slough, where the ocean meets land in unique ways, and seeing LA burn. How to reconcile calm stabilization into that destruction of the earth, animals, humans, is difficult. I don't know how to alleviate the suffering and cannot accept it, and do not know what equanimity is in this context. I reject what is happening and want to go beyond this.
Yes. Yes, I resonate. Mhm. I live close to the Monterey area. I have been to the Elkhorn Slough. It is heartbreaking. And it's not that we accept the desecration of the planet. There is a great master in our tradition, Shantideva, and he said, we must accept what we can't change, but we must change what we can. And we need the wisdom to know the difference. I have had this kind of conversation with friends, good Buddhist practitioners who have the same pain. It's very difficult. But if we cultivate love, there is a sense of inner peace that arises. And if we remember, if we can embrace the possibility that this mental continuum that we have has the potential to actually be in a state of equanimity all the time. So with equanimity, one realizes, no, we don't accept what's happening. We don't want so much degradation. And yet, where do we start to make the change? From the outside or the inside? Can we do both? With an attitude of loving kindness and compassion, can we start at the ground. You see, from a political standpoint, can we start at home and try to work with organizations that help? You know, I totally resonate with the concern. I don't have an answer. And if I focus on all of the pain in the world, I can fall right into empathic distress. Not look anymore. I can't see. I can't look. But if I have compassion, I will do what I can to be able to make a change. And I will face it. But I will accept what I cannot change. I'll do what I can.
Thank you. Susan responds, she cannot accept it.
Yes, I get it. I get it. I understand. I understand. Then what? What is the purpose of this life? His Holiness, straight up, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, the purpose of this life is to cultivate lasting happiness. So we must accept what we can't change what we can in order to come to a state of peace, inner peace, and cultivating, helping all of those who are harmed, whatever we can do. That's all. That's all I don't have a better answer. Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. Same time, same place next week. Thank you.